Hello again, guys, in our show. We always have new people with new stories, with new ideas, with new everything, with new books, and with new experiences. And today we have a couple. Please, nice couple. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, thanks for having us on, Arthur. My name is Dr. George Naum. My nickname is Jeep. That's what people know me as, and know me as Dr. Jeep. I have been a doctor for 30 years, but now doing marriage coaching with my wife, Vanessa, here.
Hello there.
And we've been married for 30 years, been together for 31, and it's our life's passion to do what we're doing, marriage coaching and helping other people to get to understand more about their relationships and to work through their problems.
So I think you are the perfect people in the time that we're living. There haven't been so many divorces and many problems, let's say, in relationship with people. And I think you are the right people, and you are the right for us. So,
Well, thank you.
so can we start with the first questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I would like to start before people get into a relationship because sometimes people make mistakes before they get into that. Because when they get into, then it's like already they are something is wrong. So it's they start with the, let's say we say, with the wrong foot. Okay. So what do you think people make mistakes when they get to know one another before they get married or have a life together?
Um, it's common with everybody. It seems like that has problems. It's usually this for the same reason, and that is communication before marriage, especially when there's been a decision to be, that they're going to be engaged.
Mhm.
Uh, Conversation is not about anything that is important. And what I mean is, let me give you an example. You talk a lot about what you like to do, maybe as far as going to a movie or different books that you like, or that you like to travel. But do you really talk about something that is substantial that you're going to face when you get married? For instance, I was in training to be a doctor when Vanessa and I got together. And something that we talked about was that I was going to want to work in a separate area than where I was being trained. And I think what happens with couples, they don't talk about that. They don't talk about the fact that what are both of you going to do, and are either of you going to be okay going to a separate place to work, whether your wife or your husband goes there, or are you really wanting to stay where you are because you have family there? Do you talk about whether you want to have children? And if you talk about whether you want to have children, how many children do you want to have? That was a big issue with us. What tends to happen when you talk about serious things like this is, especially if it's a problem, it causes an argument. And sometimes when Vanessa and I would talk, she would get upset, she would cry. And so what we just decided to do is, well, we're not going to continue to talk about this because she was uncomfortable, and then I was uncomfortable seeing her uncomfortable. But that is absolutely the wrong thing to do. Too many times what happens is that people think that their partner is going to change when they get married. They think something's going to happen when you put a ring on the finger. And too often that's not the case. We've run into people that have addiction problems, whether it's alcohol or something like that. And there's this thought, oh, well, we get married, it's going to get better. And it doesn't. So these uncomfortable things are things that need to be worked out before you get married. And if you can't work them out, then you decide, okay, well, we're not going to get married until we till we get this worked out. Too many people have this vision of the day, the wedding, and how all that's going to be, and that's all part of the honeymoon feelings.
And it eclipses the rest, let's say. It eclipses all the problems that can cause during that, huh?
Exactly. But unfortunately, after that honeymoon, those feelings are gone. Real life hits you. And then when real life hits you, that's when all these problems that should have been taken care of before you got married, that's when they crop up, and usually they're worse.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think a tip to couples who are thinking about getting married is what is your style for conflict resolution? In other words, when you have tough subjects to talk about, what's that look like to you? What does that feel like to you? Is it a battleground? We're all different human beings, and we aren't mind readers. So we can't, just because we think we know someone really well, there's always more to learn. We don't know everything about them.
Exactly.
So having said that, learning how to communicate with each other, even during the rough times, is just insurance that when you get married, that you'll be able to continue that practice through your marriage, because tough times happen to everybody, right?
Yeah,
they definitely do. So we just have to learn how to get through that as a couple.
And part of that is what one partner or the other may have a feeling about their partner or something, but they're afraid to bring it up because they're, everything's going really well, and they're afraid to bring it up because it might cause you to break up. But you need to bring things like that up, and I think that's what a lot of couples just don't understand.
And I'll give you another example. I was previously married before I met Jeep, and I was married to my ex-husband who suffered from alcoholism. And there were signs before we got married, but I thought, once we get married, he's gonna control that behavior, right? Well, that didn't happen. And I lost my train of thought.
So you got married, and it started to crop up, and it was even worse.
Absolutely.
So I had a similar issue. I was previously engaged before Vanessa and I got together, and my fiance at that time, she really wanted me, but she didn't want to have anything to do with my friends or family. Okay. And so I kind of initially I saw that, I just kind of blew it off like this is going to improve. And it didn't. The closer we got, the worse it got. The more she just wanted me and nobody that had anything to do with me. And I was so caught up in the feelings. I was so in love that I wasn't seeing it. And this is another thing. If people around you, especially that mean a lot to you, friends and family, are saying, there's a problem here, I see, and they're all telling you that, but you're not being able to see it or understand it yourself. Most of the time they're right. And what happened with me is we had an argument and we separated for a period of time, and I started to understand what was being talked about, and fortunately I made the decision not to get married because I saw that this was going to be a problem that was only going to get worse after we got married.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, what do you think? I'll just stay a little bit on this before people get married. So, I've heard many cases when people they say, okay, as you said that, okay, maybe he will change. But there are also some cases when people when they get married, they really change. For them it's like, okay, now I have to be a different person. I'm a married person, so I have to be more serious. I have to take my life differently, and this is, let's say, a positive side. But can it's not easy to bet on that. Let's say, you cannot bet that, okay, he's going to change or he's not going to change, right? That is.
I understand exactly what you're saying,
Mhm,
and you're right. In some cases, people do. People will change. They understand the seriousness of being married, and they make a change.
mhm,
How often does that happen? Unfortunately, not a lot. So it's a big risk to take, the step in getting married when this problem still exists, hoping that it might change. I'm not saying that it doesn't,
mhm.
but it's a big risk to take.
What about the other problem that people face? Let's say that let's say everybody has his own goal in life, and sometimes when people, let's say, meet together, they like one another. So, and their goals are quite, I would say, two extremes, and they say, okay, well, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay, and then maybe this is one of the problems that they can face later.
Definitely. We're individual people, and we have our hopes and our dreams, and
Mhm.
they could be separate from our partner. Not only that, but what went on in our family of origin? In other words, what did we witness in our own home? So therefore, it becomes really important to see that pattern and to have discussions about it, because I'm not going to like everything that my husband does,
Right.
but can I live with
With it.
that?
Mhm. I see. Mm.
And that's important. And you only get through these times with communication.
Mhm.
Not communicating about it, holding it from each other. Just what happens is it causes a barrier eventually between you, and then a barrier causes distance between you, and then distance leads to even worse communication, and then you start living like roommates instead of people that are married. And when you get to living like roommates, then things like infidelity happens, and all kinds of problems that happen that wouldn't if you just communicated with each other.
Mhm.
It's about being vulnerable,
Mhm.
and I want Vanessa to be vulnerable with me, um, and I certainly want to be vulnerable with her.
And what does that mean, being vulnerable? Being vulnerable means that I'm willing to share my heart with him, even some things, maybe thoughts that I feel like, wow, I wouldn't tell another human being I had that thought. But however, I trust in our relationship, and I trust that when I tell him that, he's not going to shame me. He's going to accept it, and he's going to accept me.
Mhm.
And then when I feel that I've been accepted no matter what, that vulnerability is the glue that holds us together.
Mm-hmm. I like to use the word honesty. You know, for example, when I met my wife, my ex-wife, I said to her, you know, I told her the worst scenario of mine. I told her the worst Arthur, you know, before she knew me, you know, look, you look at me like this, but I'm not like that, you know, I'm this and this and this. I told her everything. And to be honest, I wasn't afraid of her that she will tell somebody else. I didn't care because I wanted the person, even it would be even she didn't like me, at least the word would be spread that okay, he is like that. At least the person who will come to me, he will say, oh, I like him. You know what I mean? It's like at least they know my borders. Let's say that it's me. I never went to the end of that, but I have to tell her because you never know. Because oh, you didn't tell me this, you know. Anyway, so
And that
yes.
that honesty really needs to start before
Mhm.
you, like you talked about, before you get married. You need
Yeah.
to have that kind of honesty,
Mhm.
and there needs to be this willingness by both of you
Mhm.
to understand. And when you have that honesty, you need to talk about that honesty with emotion. And
Mhm.
how we coach is to have that honesty and vulnerability, and use emotion and use words to describe that emotion.
Exactly.
And that's hard. That's hard for guys to do. First of all, you're not wired that way.
Okay.
And second of all, society doesn't condition you to be that way.
Mhm.
Society conditions you to be rough and tough and
Mhm.
head of the household and suck it up and but how do you really feel about all of that? You know what? It's almost like you have to put on that mask in order to be a male in society. But are you allowing your wife to know your inner feelings?
Mhm. Okay. Uh, I have something on that. So it's like sometimes you know it's like when somebody needs a shoulder. So if
Yes.
two people are crying, so there's no shoulder there. Okay, let's make it by turn. Let's say one side.
I love that. I love that.
But
Just
I
the
agree with
fact,
you. But the thing is that honesty in this case is like if somebody is honest, the other part is like I like to say that when somebody speaks from the heart, the other person doesn't need to use his brain. He needs to use his heart to understand.
yes,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it
And
is a level. Mhm.
accept that person for who they are. Because you want to be treated for who you are, right?
Exactly.
Unconditionally,
Mhm.
which means no matter what.
Mhm.
You want to be treated that way. So when you're both treating each other that way, there's safety there.
Exactly. Mhm.
And in using emotion in communicating, say you said to your spouse, I really don't like the fact that you don't respect my opinion.
Mhm.
And in what how it makes me feel is it makes me feel gray. And it makes me feel gray like clouds that are right before a thunderstorm.
Mhm.
And so in using language like that, they kind of get an understanding of what your feelings are like.
Mhm.
And then they're encouraged to do the same thing when they talk, when they talk too.
Because his definition of gray and my definition of gray could be different.
Mhm.
So when we really explore, okay, what does gray mean to you?
Mhm.
What does it sound like? What does it look like? What feelings do you associate with that? Then I have a better idea of what gray means to him.
And how intense is it? On a
Right.
scale of 1 to 10,
Yeah, right.
is it a 5, like it's in the middle? It's a 2. It really doesn't bother me that much, or is it a 10? It's
Mhm.
very intense, and this is and this is how I'm feeling. So in using this, they get it. Okay. They connect better.
So already we got into after the marriage or after the decision that we will be together, right? Already we are in that. So there are problems that people find immediately the next day. In your experiences, what are these kind of problems that people face the next day after they get married? They sleep together, and in the morning, I haven't seen this before in you. What have you seen in?
Well, that's really not what we see, because we help clients, people, we help the ones that want to work together. They want to have a good marriage. In the scenario that you mentioned, my initial reaction is, okay, you mentioned honesty. What happened? Somebody wasn't being honest enough about, if there's that much of a dramatic change from one day to the next, somebody wasn't being honest.
And usually, if it's right after the wedding, usually you're in that honeymoon stage. There's all this physical attraction. You can't wait to be with each other. You can't wait to be intimate with each other, and that's all you're focusing on. What you're talking about usually is when those feelings kind of start to wear down, and then somebody may act or do a certain way, and then you're starting to think to yourself, I never saw that before. He or she really never told me about that. Wow, this is really different. And what you need to do is get right on it, to communicate about it, to start to get it resolved. Don't say to yourself, it'll get better. That's always the worst thing to do. You need to get it out front. You need to start working it out. You need to communicate about it.
Yeah, it won't fix itself. So have the courage to reach out to each other and talk about it, and then come to an agreement on how you will handle that conflict.
It's not easy. It's hard. And we don't like to do things that are hard. We shy away from doing things that are hard, but this kind of hard needs to be done for the sake of your relationship.
And not only that, but we grow as individuals instead of being stagnant. I may be scared to death to talk to him, but once I have the courage to do it and I talk to him, I've grown a lot, so that the next time it'll be easier to talk to him.
And really, you don't want to have that kind of fear to talk to your spouse. You want to know that it's a safe place for you to go, and that they're going to be understanding, and, for lack of a better phrase, bite your head off. They're going to sit there and listen. Oftentimes that doesn't happen, and if that doesn't happen, then that's a sign of a bigger problem that needs to be addressed.
Let's say that before a couple get divorced, they don't go just, let's say, talking together. Oh, I don't agree with you. That is not right, and just let's get divorced. Nobody goes like that. Okay, even somebody says divorce, it doesn't mean that. Okay, so usually, what is something that starts the crack? Let's say physical, economical. What kind of feelings? What is that makes people?
Are you familiar with the term, the little things mean a lot?
Yes.
Okay, so it's going through your time together with just the little things. And when you're not doing little things for each other, it adds up over time. And then resentment builds. And with resentment comes anger. And with anger comes you not agreeing, because then, we all want to be right? So then it develops into, well, this argument, somebody's got to win this argument. And we as human beings, we don't want to lose. So we're both fighting for our sides instead of fighting to find out what the real thing is, what the real problem is. And say, for example, you have you're working a tremendous amount of hours, and you come home and you're really hungry, and you expected your spouse to prepare dinner, but she had a bad day too, so the dinner's not made. And then that behavior continues, and say it happens more often and more often and more often. You may have overlooked it in the beginning, but then it starts to get at you. And when it starts to really get at you, that's the time to say, have a discussion. Why aren't you doing it? What are the reasons why you're not doing it? Do you need my help? We're both working like heck. How about you get some of my help as well? Or
that's okay. I would say, having grown up in a household with a father who always thought he was right, always, that's called narcissism. That there is, there's nothing that I have done that's wrong. This happened. It's your fault. It's not my fault. So when a spouse sees that, they're not going to bring anything up, because what they're going to say is, it's not going to do me any good. And I would hear this from my mother saying, why should I bring up anything to you? Because you're just going to say it's my fault. It's, I'm right about everything. And so then what happens is she doesn't bring up anything and talks. And so there's things that continue to bother her, tend to fester, they tend to build up. And as Vanessa said, that causes resentment. And then, resentment causes intimacy, especially. The sexual part of your relationship is going to die on the vine, because it's awful hard to be in a bed with somebody who you resent. You're not wanting to fulfill that part of your relationship. And then when that goes, and then it's like, okay, well, if I'm not going to get it here, I'm going to go somewhere else and get it. And that leads to infidelity. So this thing about you're never wrong and you're always right, there's no place in marriage for that. But unfortunately, it happens a lot, more than you would think.
So also these are problems, correct? So also we have this kind of problems that somebody does something to the other part, and let's say they sleep back to one another, okay? In the morning they are moody, they just good morning, how we expect how we express ourselves when we are angry with somebody, okay? And we go to work, we come back, we do the same. How can a couple be safe from this kind of moody that brings more and more problems in?
I think a good rule of thumb is to treat your spouse the way you want to be treated. And she will in turn treat you the way she wants to be treated. And you both are taking care of each other that way. For example, if you wake up moody in the morning, turn that around, because maybe you don't want her being moody. So think about, well, if I don't want her to be moody to me, then I'm not going to be moody to her. And so when you start thinking this is a team, this is two of us, instead of just me, then you start focusing on the two of you.
And some of it too, and it took me years with what I'm going to tell you. I always was somebody like, if there's a problem before you go to bed, you want to you want to get through it, resolve it, and don't go to bed angry. And the reason that I did that is because I had a very good friend who actually taught me when I was in high school, and he and his wife always did that. They never went to bed angry. And it happened one time that they were apart. She was driving, and she ended up getting into a car wreck and passed away. And they weren't together. But he had solace in gratitude in the fact that there was nothing between them at the time that she passed. So that really stuck with me. And so when Vanessa and I first got together, I would make her stay up till 6 o'clock in the morning until we got whatever it was we were arguing about taken care of. Well, as she told me and has told me before, she would just eventually agree to agree, even though she wasn't feeling that way, just so she could go to bed. And so,
get him off my back.
So what I had to start, what I had to start doing is, even though I didn't agree with how she was handling it, that I had to give her space and understand this is how she was doing. This was her way of dealing with it. It's not that we weren't going to talk about it, but if she wasn't in the mood to talk about it before we went to bed, then that's just what I had to understand and accept. And I've done that. I don't like it, but I've understood that that's how she does things, and just accept that. And the problem will get taken care of, just maybe not in the period of time that I necessarily want it taken care of.
Arthur, I have Italian blood running through my body.
Okay. Mediterranean.
So with that comes, when I get upset, I need time to cool down.
Okay.
And he's not like that.
Yeah,
He's over cool.
So I'm like, okay, that's okay. I don't like it, but I will give you your space to do that. And it would have been difficult to understand that if we didn't eventually get through the problem, whatever it was. But we do. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to go to bed angry, but I know this is going to get resolved, just not now.
Okay. I just wanted to mention something. What about forgiveness in this case? Because usually when, it's like, if, for example, if one part, doesn't matter the man or the woman, does that, so if they don't ask forgiveness from the other, so I think it'll be like something in the middle. It's like something is still will be there. It's like it'll come back again and again. I think so. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I totally agree with you. And forgiveness is it's a decision. And you can choose to sit there and be angry and be mad and say, "Wow, you really, really hurt me." No, I'm not going to forgive you. So what does that do? It serves no purpose. It just causes a lot of resentment, a breakdown in communication. And obviously there are going to be times when the shoe's going to be on the other foot, and you're going to be asking for forgiveness. So if you're not willing to make that decision when your spouse is honestly wanting your forgiveness for what happened, then it's really a big problem. It's just like in making a decision to forgive, it is an example of also making a decision to love. Love sometimes is you're really, really mad and you're really, really upset, and you think that you don't love, but you really do. And that's when you make this decision that I'm going to forgive because I love and because I understand. And sometimes your spouse may be, Vanessa suffers from a chronic illness that involves fatigue and pain. And sometimes, you'd like to think that each of you is given 50% in your relationship. But sometimes, because of how you're feeling or things that are going on, 20% is your 50%. And I've come to understand that. She's giving me all that she can give. And there's times when, whatever's happening during the day with me, same thing. My 20 or 30% is my 50%. And that's something that takes love and understanding from the both of you.
I see. So, because time is running, and I hope we will have another talk together.
We absolutely will.
Yeah.
But before we close, maybe you want to add something to this interview, something to help our audience about maybe anything that they need.
Well, Arthur, there's two things that I always like to leave people with, and one is you're not alone.
Okay.
There's all kinds of many people that are dealing with the same kind of problems. And the second thing is, don't suffer in silence. If what you have going on is bigger than the both of you, and you need some help getting through these, getting some tools taught to you to help you get through the situation, don't feel embarrassed by that. Have tremendous amount of respect for people that reach out, because it's the people that reach out for the benefit of their relationship that get better. So those two things are what I would say.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time and for your experience, for your advices, for everything that you said to us. And you hope to